Hello, everyone. My name is Corey James, and today I'll be talking to you about industry insights. This is Module 9 of the I-Corps program, and I will start by giving you a heads up that I'm recording this from my home, and if you're lucky, you might hear a little 9-month-old girl, my daughter, chiming in the background. So let's get started. I'll cover today basically industries, an overview of the subject, the competition dynamic that your venture has within the industry that it's in, and then market size, and then I'll address the subject of how to visualize your venture. So first, industries overview. So for your company to succeed, you must understand the world that your company is entering into. So you, through this program of I-Corps, are working on an idea for a venture or a technology at the core of a business venture that exists within a much larger industry context. You have to get incredibly familiar with that industry context. So you'll need to understand, relevant archetypes and personas, who are the influencers or the decision makers, where does your company fit within the industry? For instance, does your product fit in another company's supply chain, and so on. So let's start with an example. So I sell cat toys. Say, I'm launching this cat toy venture. I've loved cats my whole life. It's not actually true. I've never owned a cat. But what kind of questions are really important to think about and answer as I'm starting and growing this venture? So who are influencers? Apparently there are 10 cat influencers on Instagram. So the top 10 cats on Instagram. Think of potential partners. So companies like Petco or grain-free or gluten-free cat food, and think of decision makers who are, the major players within this industry, and people like who are the distributors, someone like Petco or other third-party companies. So this is just a basic example of just things to consider for the way in which your venture can fit within a larger industry context. So here's another. So I specialize in making bulletproof glass, and I want to sell my windows to Tesla. Tesla, you may have heard, is a car manufacturing company started by this guy, Elon Musk, who is a little crazy. And so what if I have the question of what is the name of Tesla's head of supply management or head of purchasing? The reason or context for this example is just a funny sort of instance that happened when Tesla revealed the design for its Cybertruck, which you see over here on the screen. And when they were trying to display the bulletproof glass, they threw a heavy metal ball at the window, actually twice, and both times it broke the shatterproof bulletproof glass. So product still in development, I would say, to say the least. So what is the name of Tesla's head of supply management? I got on LinkedIn to try to just answer this question, started looking around, started Googling around, and came across an individual named Roshan Thomas, who is the Vice President of Global Supply Management at Tesla. Went to MIT and appears to be a smart individual, lives in San Francisco. And so this is just an example of the types of activities you'll need to get to know the major pieces of the industry that you're existing in. Just a practical example here. So your company or product exists within a complex ecosystem, and that's incredibly important to remember. And as such, you should get to know all the stakeholders that are relevant. So this is just a layout of if I was an Android app developer, all of the different pieces and players that play into my function as a business or my growth as a business. So you have the Google Play Store, which is the sole marketplace for your Android app. So if someone has a phone that runs Android, that is where they would go to buy it. And then you have the Google or Android starting at 12 o'clock in the middle. Google is the manufacturer of potentially the phone, but the software especially, which is Android. And then shifting to the left, there's phone manufacturers, which Google now makes their own phones, but there's also Samsung, OnePlus, LG, HTC, all of which run on Android. And then there's other app developers this is Angry Birds, Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram. And those app developers use designers and freelancers all of whom contribute to their general business, which is all listed for downloading or for sale on the Google Play Store. And all of that goes into that simple decision of whether or not a consumer downloads and uses your app. So again, just get to know the product or the industry context or the ecosystem that your product exists in. It's just one simple example. And so one way of understanding and visualizing specifically competition, so people that are directly or indirectly competing with you within that industry context, is something called a petal diagram. So a petal diagram, it's a relatively new way that someone can represent the competitive landscape by segmenting the existing markets to demonstrate where your future customers are today. So you'll see in the bottom left corner, you draw market segments where you believe your future customers are today. And the petal map is a form of a hypothesis. So this is a hypothesis of where your customers will be coming from to your company. And in addition, it can help you to understand where, saying the lowest hanging fruit or the first potential customer segment would be, which group of segment or which group of customers you and your venture should go after first. So we'll look at an example. Mercari. I don't know if many of you have heard of Mercari, but it is a selling app, basically a way in which people can list for sale online and buy things online, all used. And it is based in Japan, and it is a multi-billion-dollar company that is really trying to break into the US at the moment. I think they even had some Super Bowl ads in 2019 or 2020. And so here's a little bit of what their petal diagram might look like. So starting at 12 o'clock, social media. So Instagram and Facebook both have options now where you can directly buy through the app. And informal Facebook groups have reselling features or reselling themes to them all the time. There's a buy, sell, use, trade. There's two groups that I'm a part of personally where I sometimes look for things. And then there's website marketplaces, which are just long-standing institutions like Craigslist that look like they were websites made in the 90s. And those are just really useful because they've been around so long and so many people know about them. And then there's yard or estate sales, and these might be more indirect competitors, but this is in person in your neighborhood. I go walk around and can find different random things to buy for sale, especially Saturday mornings in Midtown Mobile. And then there's the higher end option, which is Sotheby's or auctions. This is one potential customer segment. And basically this is just higher end, really specifically catered towards more wealthy individuals that are more collectors and could potentially be a competitor for Mercari. And then other niche selling apps, which would be something like Poshmark, which is another billion-dollar company that specializes in reselling clothes and shoes. So these are potential areas of where your future customers are now or where they could be coming from. So it's important to note too, before diving into this exercise description, is that you don't actually need 5 different segments for your customer, for displaying the customer or competitor landscape, for instance. So if there isn't 5 distinct categories of competition for you or competitive ventures for you, then you can visualize your petal diagram with 4. So in class, you'll spend time as a group completing a petal diagram for your company, which will then be turned in once it's completed. You want to take some time and really do this exercise thoroughly. So it's a way of really thinking through who are the direct and indirect competitors that might be existent out there and might be a threat to the growth and thriving of my company. So there is a document or a template that is in the Canvas that you should look to as a resource when completing this exercise. So now we'll shift to market size. So what is the size of the opportunity that you're working on? The first largest circle that we'll talk about is the total addressable market, which just describes the total revenue opportunity that exists for a product or service that you're working on. So for instance, say, I manufacture organic pet treats. The US organic pet treat market is worth $1 billion in annual sales. This is just a hypothetical example. I don't actually know if that number is correct. Then within the total addressable market, there's a serviceable addressable market or serviceable available market. And that's the size of the opportunity that exists within the company's core competence. So specifically, I make organic dog treats. And of that $1 billion total addressable market, the US organic dog treat market is about $300 million. Then you have finally your target market. The target market is the group of consumers or organizations that are most likely to buy your company's products or services. And it's often represented as a percentage of the serviceable, addressable, or available market. Say, for instance, organic dog treats are a $300 million industry, and my target is to get 4% of that $300 million industry, which would equal $12 million in annual sales. So keep that in mind as a way of visualizing the size and understanding the size of your market. The target market is the most kind of crucial number that you're looking for to convey the size of the opportunity, but the other are equally, the others are also important for setting the context. So where do you find this information? Totally depends is the short answer. Some examples, just briefly, are total addressable market, so that largest category. Databases such as IBISWorld have proven to be really useful, or industry-specific publications or analysts, peer-reviewed articles, things of that sort. Ask yourself the question, where do the nerdy people dwell that would study the largest kind of scope of the industry that your venture falls within? The serviceable available market is also those same three categories. So IBISWorld and databases, publications, analysts, and then peer-reviewed articles. And then target market is a little bit more specific. So you can talk to potential customers, identify and talk to channel partners, so other industry partners that might have done in-house research, identify and talk to competitors, and then just research. So the same categories as up above, just trying to nail down what exactly the size of your opportunity is and what piece of it you're hoping to get. So now we'll look towards experience mapping. So shifting gears, experience mapping is just very simply the way in which you convey the core pieces or steps of your business or product. So you can think of experience mapping as a way of thinking through and writing out in steps the experiences that people have with your product. Or another word for it is just what is the workflow of your company or product. And there's two really common types of experience mapping, at least in the startups that Innovation Portal has worked with extensively. So the two most common are user experience, or UX design is another way of commonly denoting that field. And it's common for software specifically, so things like apps and websites, etc. And then customer experience. So walk through your own product in the eyes of the customers, just to really get into the perspective that they'll have and bring when they come and encounter your venture or your product for the first time. So just some examples. You'll see customer experience mapping is on the left, and this is just the listed steps for a travel agent. So say, you have travel inspiration, you begin researching, and then booking, and then you're on the property, and then you're post-stay. And each of the subcategories at the bottom denote different pieces that a travel agent may use as touch points for their specific customer. So that's a customer experience mapping, things like social media, emailing, and then paid search, and then website emailing. You'll see, if you look closely across the bottom, different ways of connecting with the customer. And then on the right-hand side, you have user experience mapping, which for mobile apps is commonly called wireframes. Wireframes are simply the screenshot of the different app screens that someone will see when they click through the app and actually use it. So there's actually really great free or cheap software now, where if you're working on an app idea for iQor, you can utilize those resources and actually put together a really professional looking demonstration of your technology for the purpose of the final pitch presentation or final video presentation or something of the sort. So those apps include InVision and Framer are two really common ones. And so as an exercise in class, you'll get together as a group and create an experience map for your venture or product. Think of what exercise, what experience map is most relevant to your venture, and proceed accordingly. So if you do have an app, I think a wireframe exercise would be really fruitful, if not potentially a different one. So that's all that we have for today. Please make sure that you ask any questions that you may have in class during the class period. And then remember that the following week's assignments are 15 interviews and to submit a petal diagram and your company logo as well. Thank you all so much. Hope you enjoyed and hope you enjoy class.